this is the August meetup is a bonus. Normally we don't have this, but there was such a enthusiastic response to last month's onboarding focused meetup that everyone wanted another one. So here we are with a pickup. And today's topic is data migration. And I have my two lovely friends, Lynda Artesani and Sarah Prevost here to help me. And I've also included in the conversation from our side, Tracie Todd, who's our onboarding specialist. So here's the agenda. We're going to start on the front end with a key conversation, which is data migration. And we're doing that because Lynda and Sarah have a very important date at 4 o'clock Eastern. I don't know what that date is, but they have a very important date. So they're going to have to scoot out early. And I wanted to get their essentially section up front to appease their schedule because they're so generous and kind to always participate in our LeanLaw life. So thank you both. We'll then just talk a little bit about, Tracie will go through some LeanLaw Accounting Pro updates, sort of what's got done, what's ahead. We'll talk a little bit about certification. And then I really forced her to do a bit of a live demo of the what we're expecting to see in the LMS, the learning management system, just so people can get a taste of that. That is slowly creeping to being online, and we're very excited about that. Lastly, I'm going to focus on the product updates and the demo. As always, our chat session is open. People can speak. Just be respectful. We're starting to get, this is a really healthy attendance today, so we're starting to get a lot of folks on there. So maybe chat is a good way to start it, but feel free to interact. And this is not a webinar, this is a meetup. And so we want everyone to participate. And remember, our tenets of our LeanLaw Accounting Pro program is community, we're all here together. Education, we're all trying to help each other learn. And collaboration, the idea that we can together win and work with law firm clients or other clients, but specifically law firm clients. Okay, so I want to lead in. I'm going to do a quick, Sarah and Lynda, just hold off. I'm going to do a quick announcements just to get that out of the way. Just a second, then we'll push that out. LeanLaw did a monthly product update last week. This is a an online session going through the new updates. We're scheduling that on a monthly basis now. Our CTO Fred Willerup and Chase Sullivan, who is in search of a new title, but one of the people who came with us from the very beginning. He's really moving towards being in charge of the customer journey, and we just haven't titled that role. But anyways, Chase and Fred are leading this effort, and I'm going to pass over a link to everyone in case they want to see it and watch it. It's on demand, of course, through a Zoom client, so I'll chat that to the group. If I can, well, I'll chat it in a minute because I don't want to do two things at once. The second thing is our webinar series with Lauren Fogelman. She and I had a great conversation about earning more money with cleanup projects. And I'll click a link. I'll send a link out to the group that has that webinar. We have one coming up on the 16th of September, Increase Your Value, how to create irresistible packages. And on the 12th, we'll end this series, 3 ways to stop attracting the wrong clients to your business. And I've been in the services business before, and that is absolutely one of the mantras. Don't hire the wrong client and be able to fire them. Thank you, Karen. So we're also doing so our marketing team is doing 2 deep dives in the months to come. One, we really elevated the importance of compensation tracking. We seem to see more and more firms struggling with this. And we think it's almost, there's reporting and then there's compensation tracking, and it's almost its own thing. And so we're going to do a deep dive from a content perspective into that, potentially even stitching in some industry experts on law firm performance. We're also going to do a deep dive on a product comparison, LeanLaw against some of the other players in the market for that. So those are some things that are coming ahead. Any questions? So, nope, okay. Here's our topic today. So we talked last month about, well, here's our presenters. I mentioned Lynda Artesani. from Artesani Bookkeeping, Sarah Prevost from Mintage Labs, and I've also included Tracie Todd. She doesn't know that she was included in as a panelist. I literally did it as I was preparing this deck and saying, geez, Tracie should be speaking about this because she's handling it from the LeanLaw side. So the relationship in terms of the players speaking is Lynda and Sarah are working at it from the client side and representing the accounting migration and some of the best practices that need to happen inside the firm. But Tracie is on the receiving side from the LeanLaw end of things. And we're actually, Tracie and Sarah and Lynda are constantly in communication as they're onboarding, especially mid-market firms. So I wanted Tracie to be part of the conversation as understanding it from the vendor side. And then Lynda and Sarah, of course, from the client side. So I wanted to start this conversation by just going back and reviewing something that I pitched last time, just to give it a little structure. So we talked about migrating and onboarding structure. We talked about 3 phases. I just wanted to touch on this. So if we talk about phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, the group is understanding where it is we're talking. So phase 1 is this, we've engaged, there's application setup, there's some data migration, there's some accounting migration. It ends with the cutover date. So the law firm has decided on October 1st, I want to cut over from X product to LeanLaw. That's the cutover date. So the cutover, that's the end of phase 1. And the focus, we'll talk a little bit about phase 1 migration, data migration in a second. Phase 2 means that everyone is using LeanLaw, but now we're having to kind of answer the how-tos. How do you do this? How do you do that? And that's the sort of the beginning. And phase 2 ends typically with the first invoicing cycle. You've onboarded, you've done an invoicing, now you've done phase 2. You've gone through almost typically the hardest month of adopting a new product is the first 30 days because you're having to use it for real time and in your head trying to translate what you did in the previous tool to how you do it in the new tool. Phase 3 is what I call mastery and reporting, and it's typically 2 to 3 billing cycles from that first billing cycle. So it's the 3rd month. So I just wanted to review that. And I'm going to start my questions to Lynda and Sarah and really just ask, so Lynda and Sarah, what's data? How do you define data? So I just want to get that definition down as to what folks mean by data.
Go ahead, Sarah, take it away. I can tell by that face. She's like, I want to talk about data.
Okay, there's so much data. So we have client data, matter data, vendor data. We have, the banking stuff. We have all kinds of stuff. It's just like a hodgepodge mess, depending on the program you're in and coming out of and how to organize it and where the end goal is. And we have to facilitate that. So data needs to be kind of viewed in a pronged approach or a bucket approach is the best way I can describe it. And you have to think about what's relevant to which platform, meaning what is relevant that needs to go into LeanLaw versus what needs to go into QuickBooks. And I'll just kind of like start with that and help with the conversation that way.
So let's break that down so it's organized a little bit better because data can be on the LeanLaw side.
That wasn't organized well?
It was organized, but I wanted to make sure that we put it into 2 buckets a little bit. So because LeanLaw data, I mean, Tracie, you can jump in and tell me what you think. And I'm worried I'm crashing on my Chrome. It looks like it's kind of crashing on me. So if I crash, I will bring us back the best I possibly can. I have a little spinning ball on my side, but you guys can hear me, I assume?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We'll just go with it. Hopefully it'll correct itself. From the LeanLaw side, we get into data and, well, let me ask you a different question. So, from our side, we get into what goes, you said it, what goes in the accounting program and what goes into LeanLaw. And LeanLaw is that client billing data. I think what we try to do right away is to understand what data is important to the client. So, when Lynda and Sarah, how do you start that conversation about educating the clients as to what the definition of data is, and then how to organize it such that you're beginning to collate what needs to be extracted? Terrible. When does that discussion happen? Who are the players in that discussion? What's that process look like?
Well, typically, usually we end up, everything gets verified to a source document. So just because they hand us over a data file doesn't mean that it's accurate to like the tax return, the bank statements. A lot of times they'll say that they've got their trust accounting into the penny, and we find out later that it's not quite, doesn't tie back, it'll tie back to the bank, but it won't tie back to the total trust account balances. So that's really key to making sure that we've got the right data coming in and that it's clean. We want clean data. So a lot of times we don't rely, and it depends. When you think data, you could think of like a desktop file, moving it into QuickBooks Online. It's the same thing, only we're moving them generally off of other platforms like a PC Law or a Juris or even Cosmolex. And it's a little easier to move something from online to online. When it's desktop, it's a little bit more tedious, but it depends on the pulling out, right? So it depends on the client and what they have. I mean, you could do it from Excel. I mean, there's lots of different ways. A client could be in Excel. We meet a lot of attorneys that have all their records in Excel, and all of a sudden they become overwhelmed because it's a lot of manual data tracking, and then they can't keep up or it gets behind. So they're looking for something more automated. And the players involved is generally the person making the phone call could be a partner and just want something more automated because maybe they're a new partner coming in and they can't believe that they're still doing something they've been doing for the last 15 years because it works. Or it can be also an admin who's been doing the work and is like, there's gotta be a better way. And that might get the conversation going, or that person got to sign that task to work with us. And Sarah and I usually tell that person, hey, you're gonna be our best friend for the next month or 2 months or however long the engagement ends up being. Usually ends up ongoing and after the fact too.
Well, and to support what you're saying, Lynda, a lot of times data is different because when Tracie's with us, we have to help them understand what is key for the LeanLaw side and what Tracie needs and kind of interpret that dialogue because it's different from program to program. So it gets a little bit more sticky in dialogue conversation of relevant pieces that matter to LeanLaw versus the other buckets, like I had mentioned, because those are distinctly different on the workflow as well. So you have to start really digesting that piece.
So
can I put in a 2 cents?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
So I think that a lot of times if you say to a client, well, what data do you have or what data do you need? They're going to look at you like you have 6 heads.
Exactly.
And a good way I find to start the conversation is, what reports do you run? Which is kind of what Lynda was saying about, the source documents. But if you ask them, what reports do you have, what reports do you run, you're going to get a good indication of, some of the data. And then you have to go back through it to find out, because like they'll show you a report by matter. Okay, then you've got to go look at the matter and figure out what pieces of information are important from there and how are you going to get them out of whatever system they're coming from. So I kind of look at the data as being the little elements that we're working with.
Precisely. That's why they're in varying degrees. Yeah, exactly. Oh, is Jonathan?
Jonathan, no wonder he was quiet.
First time.
Yeah, where's Tracie?
Tracie, you want to jump in and work with us?
Sorry, as I mentioned, I was crashing. I don't know if it all went away for a minute, but
no, we were all still listening.
Okay, I'm sorry. I completely crashed, so I had to do that. So Karen, you brought up a really good point, which is, which would happen to be my next question, which was, how do you get started? But I want to go back to something Lynda and Sarah were saying, and Lynda specifically, which is, you talked about the players, and you kind of talked about in the sales process, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but who are you really interacting with on to actually extract the data? How do you tend to see that, and how are you communicating with them? Is it an operator? Who is that person that you tend to work with that's actually working the data and going through the reports and all the things that Karen just mentioned?
Usually the person that we interact with is the bookkeeper or accountant on staff. Also, we work with sometimes with a partner directly, because a lot of times there's decisions that have to be made in the process, So you need that person that can make the decision, and that doesn't typically end up being the admin, but we work really closely with the admin. That's usually in these firms, we're finding it's an admin that's ending up with the bookkeeper wearing the bookkeeper hat because they just were the super admin, and they're like, hey, well, you want to enter the invoices and the payables here, and that's pretty much what they know about bookkeeping, but they don't know, like, when you get into journal entries, they're like, I don't do those. So we end up working with the CPA too, or the tax professional. Very often we do, because we'll run into things like somebody will say, we just had this happen. We don't have any accounts receivable, so we don't even have to talk about that. It's like, okay, do you invoice? Yeah. Okay, so invoicing automatically makes you have you have accounts receivable, so you definitely have it. And then were they all paid at the end of the year? No, but you did a tax return on a cash basis. Okay, so let's just, but that's the way they think about the whole process.
Mm-hmm. So, Karen, Tracie, I want to bring you into the conversation from the LeanLaw perspective. And I asked you a question earlier in Slack, and I'm going to ask it now live, which is, when you're interacting with a client, what are the sort of key mistakes or misconceptions that you see from the LeanLaw side as you start to talk to some of the folks regarding, data importation? Where do you see some of the hiccups that the clients have?
Well, a couple of things. So one of the first things I've noticed is that people tend to really panic when they hear data migration. They just seem to think it's this big, huge, hairy, scary monster. Way, way, way more complicated than it is, which it isn't. So it's really important to be able to walk them through the steps so that it's just broken up into little pieces for them so that they're not in full-blown, panic mode. One of the mistakes that I see a lot is that clients think that they want to transfer all of their data, every single thing, every single client, every single matter, regardless of the clients in there 5 times and, different spellings and all of that kind of stuff. So, it's really important also to explain to them, when setting up what imports they're going to be needing, that they don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. They can have their client and matter current active data that they're going to need first and foremost. And they can also import their historical data if they wanted to for conflict checks, or just, if they just feel more comfortable having it all. But the biggest thing, and Lynda and Sarah know this really well, because we've had mutual clients that we've worked with massive amounts of data, like 15,000 lines of data, seriously. And it's just, sometimes there's a lot of back and forth with the clients to have them use that opportunity while it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's so easy to sort in different ways and all that, to clean things up, get rid of bad information, get rid of duplicates, and do whatever they need to do, because it's a lot harder to do that once it's been put into LeanLaw. Now, I tend to do a lot of that cleaning myself, but there's still back and forth with, replacing old users that are solicited as responsible with current user and so forth. So it's just, I think if you break it down into little steps with the clients, even regardless of how much data they have, even if they only have a tiny little bit, they still can just make it way blown out of proportion and make it this big giant thing that it isn't.
Hey, I'm going to share my screen again, Tracie, because there's a document or two that we use at LeanLaw that I thought maybe you might like to just explain how you use that. Can everyone see the pre-import info?
Yep.
Yes, Matt.
Yeah, so this is something that, this is basically what I use when I send it to engineering for the import. I kind of, and I've got some changes I'm going to make to it, because some of the things are a little redundant, but I'll make sure that all of these questions have been asked of the client, like, is it going to get pushed right into QuickBooks? Because if the information is already in QuickBooks, we don't want to duplicate things. I mean, there's a lot of little details that need to be addressed. If there's existing sample data in there, do we want engineering just to get that out right as they're importing? We need to make sure that anybody that is listed as a responsible or as an active user, that they've been created in the LeanLaw account and things like that. I usually have a whole list on the bottom of special instructions for the engineering team. Examples would be, sometimes the data will come through and there'll be a first name, last name, company name, and different things. So I'll just say, use column A and B, but don't use C. And it just really depends on the company. But there's often, usually it's similar until it gets to little finicky details, and then we'll just kind of put specific notes in so that when they're importing, they know exactly what to do. The big thing we have is like field limitations, and people like will say, well, can't you make your fields bigger? But it's actually not a LeanLaw thing. We're limited by QuickBooks field limitations. So that's another misconception, is that we're just being mean and not giving enough room.
It would be great on that form, excuse me, Jonathan, Sarah and I were talking about, it'd be great if that was a Google form that you could export to Excel, so they had certain fields they had to fill out and they understood it. Because you can make a Google form that can go to Excel.
Yeah, no, it's a Google form. That's what it is.
This is a Google form?
No, this is an Excel. Well, it's an Excel sheet. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Google form. But I think that's a good note, Lynda, which talks about process. And I think what Lynda's really talking about is the process that, and what Tracie's also speaking to, is that you really have to have a regimented process in interacting, collecting the data, and then once we at the LeanLaw side see the data, the back and forth to help educate the client, hey, you need to change this or that. And what I see from my perspective is clients get stuck in things. The best example is client matter IDs. They get stuck in this idea that we have to have the name in this way and this, because all hell is going to break loose if you don't have it. And many times we can appease them. But what's important, I think we talked about this in onboarding, is to then ask them, well, why do you need that? Why is that important? And typically the answer is because we've always had it that way. I'm going to show another document really quick here, which is the actual LeanLaw data format that we bring in. And just to say that it's not that complicated, because not every field needs to be filled out, but these are the fields that you might bring in, and you can say display name, client ID, client first name, last name, company name. The matter ID, of course, is super important, the client ID, and then the matter title is super important. But you can also bring in things like this is important, who's the responsible attorney? Was there an originator, 1 or 2? Originator goes back into compensation. That can be super duper important. Practice area may or may not be meaningful to the client. The date that it was open, referral source is just a line item in LeanLaw. This adverse party related adverse, those are all for conflict check reasons. That can be imported. Notes, customs are just custom fields in LeanLaw, date closed. So you can see there's just not that much data to bring in to make a client active and alive. It's really those forms. Now, there's a fair amount of finesse that goes into it, and we at LeanLaw will read that in into our file. So Lynn and Sarah, on your side, talk a little bit about the QuickBooks data migration, because we talked a lot about the LeanLaw side. Talk about some of the steps that go through that have to happen in tandem in terms of getting the data staged in the QuickBooks side. And where does that happen, phase 1, phase 2, and then after from a reporting perspective?
Yeah, so what we tend to do, I think a good qualifier too, is, and Lynda alluded to this, is are we starting with a fresh QuickBooks file? Because Tracie kind of brought up a great point. If we're starting with a fresh file, great. We want the data that gets entered into LeanLaw pushed into QuickBooks. To Tracie's point, and Lynda and I've seen this, is if the data is in the 2 places, we can't have it. We need to make a determination on the onset. Also, the data that's in QuickBooks that's existing, does it model what's in the existing platform? Meaning, like, do you have client IDs? Does the naming convention work the same? That's another opportunity to clean it up, and that's a great first step. We prefer if you have existing client ID identifiers and matter numbers that are in the other program, let's retain those and keep them the same. We have had it where we had to adjunct a few numbers and change some things, and it became, still till this day, it's a muddled mess. And we're constantly having to look at old data to confirm what's in the new platform. And Lynda and I have it's just been a pain point.
Also, we had a client that actually decided they didn't want the numbers at all. And you really need the numbers. I mean, it's just a matter number is important, I think, for tracking the data. I think that when you start to do names, if you have like an immigration firm and they have, you know, Jose Diaz, and there could be 5 Jose Diaz's.
Yeah.
Number is really important. And a lot of clients are like, well, we don't know if we want the number. No, keep the number. Keep the number. It makes it easier to follow. Because then afterwards, if you don't use the number and then you decide to use the number, it's just for most of the apps, the other ones all kind of require a number. And LeanLaw does a great numbering system. So even if they want to go forward, just do the numbering, and that way you can, I like the one with the year, but I mean, it depends on the firm.
Depends on the firm. Yeah. We see some interesting stuff sometimes, but
so when, you know, from the data migration on the QuickBooks side, one of the challenges is that the law firm never stops operating. I mean, occasionally you get a new law firm that hasn't operated yet, but in general, most of the migrations happen in real time. And so we've seen this tension, meaning Lynda, Sarah, Tracie, and I, in that, you know, AR balances aren't necessarily in place, or so the clients are wanting their AR balances, or how do you do a payment? So I guess I'm asking in this question, how do we manage that transition time from essentially not adding data to the old program, but then QuickBooks is not completely live yet? There's a, you know, 1 to 3 to 4 week period on that. So what are your best practices in managing the client's expectations and educating them up front, and then managing the moment of what's happening in real time against where, you know, how they can interact or not interact with the QuickBooks file?
Lynda, did you want to take this one, or should we just, because I think we in our practice decided firmly that we were going to have some strong cutoff dates because we've allowed for things to happen. But Lynda, did you want to speak to like how we're going to do this, or what our thoughts are on it? Yeah.
And don't forget to say the why. I'd like to know what you're going to do, but I think the group needs to hear the why as well.
Yeah, sure.
For us, because we've done so many of them, we're still, we keep talking about how we're evolving because we keep going back to our contract and we keep changing it. But what happens with firms when you start to work on the data migration is that they're very excited at the beginning, and then they get back into their work when we start to take over, and then they kind of lag in the data. Then all of a sudden we're up against, we want to get these things, like they decide what date are you going to start using LeanLaw. And if, for example, it's September 1st, then they're going to track their time on September 1st, but continue using the old program to bill out the prior month. So we have to make sure that when they start in LeanLaw, they're not back in PC law, still entering the time there as well. Or we have to make sure that that date we have a delineation date. So we're actually putting dates in we put dates right in the contract now. So, all right, this is the date that we're going to do this. This is the date that we're going to start to fully implement LeanLaw, do the first billing in LeanLaw is this date. And we mark it down that way so that if we don't have the data by X, and there's a date there, from you, client list, for example, we can't bill. So these are the things that we've learned from doing it, because then if we don't do those dates, the client will drag their heels. Then they come to us and say, here's the data, it's all set. We're going to start on Monday, right? And I still have to give it to LeanLaw. It's not fair to them to have to be rushing to get all this stuff in because they dragged it out for 3 weeks. So that's basically the reason why we want a nice uniform mark in the sand. So we want that line in the sand. And then if they miss the date, now they know right off the bat, because in the contracts, if you miss X date, then this is going to be pushed to the following month. And you're going to have to keep, this whole project is now going to get pushed out a month, because they're always in a big hurry to start to use LeanLaw, but we have to have the client list in place. I mean, you can't start tracking the time unless we've already imported the client list. We don't want them importing a few names here because they need to do the billing, and then we're pulling a list in, because then the list, if the name's in there, it's going to cause a problem on LeanLaw side, have to pull it in.
Well, and to help support, kind of like we've seen all these, hodgepodgey moments, but to help support us and what we can deliver in the best possible time frame, we need to help them. We need to find out on the front end in the discovery process, what is your typical billing cycle? What is it because they'll say it's this, and then you get in a little further and kind of ask deeper questions to kind of what Karen's saying, and you start to see these reports that are in front of you, and you're like, I'm seeing your billing on the middle of the month, you just need to sort of really, like, that's why we ended up putting it in our contractual agreements, like, because it's putting a burden on us and we cannot execute in a week's time for a whole firm. Like, that's not fair to us either, or them.
So I think the note here, and Erica asked the question, she said, how many migrations have you guys done? And are they all virtual? And the answer is, I understand it, Lynda and Sarah, they are all virtual. Nothing's done in person. I know that you guys went to Texas once, but it wasn't for that client. You just happened to be there, Lynda.
Well, we were planning to see our client.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I think
But
we're
like on opposite sides of the states too. I'm in Oregon and she's in Florida. So,
the comment I wanted to make about what Lynn and Sarah were just saying, which really super important, is that the client doesn't understand what it takes on the LeanLaw side or on your accounting side to actually take that data and implement it into a system. They don't, and sometimes they're presumptuous, or sometimes they're just ignorant. One or the other, there's a false expectation. So staging that up front, that expectation about when they need to deliver it and how long it takes for the respective parties to do the work is uber critical. The piece I really want to get though at Lynda and Sarah is, think about that big firm that we're talking about with accounts receivable, and that the firm is pressing to say, we can't see the AR. And that's because you guys were in the middle of building the file. And it goes back to my very specific question, which is, how do you manage the moment while you guys are building the file and the QuickBooks file is essentially locked to a certain degree, right? But yet there may be attorneys or other stakeholders in the law firm that need access to data in real time, and or things are happening. There's a payment coming in, or there's a check to be cut. How are you managing that the accounting platform isn't essentially live, or is some components of it live and you're saying, okay, you can cut checks, but you can't do this? How do you deal with that the business doesn't shut, you can't do it in a weekend. So do they stack it up? How do you work that moment and manage that moment?
That's the integrated piece, right?
Give them access to the file until they're going to get into QuickBooks. When that billing month is when they get access to the QuickBooks file. We've done it the other way, where we gave them like view only access, and it's just 1,000 questions are asked because the data is not quite done. And we've decided not to let them have access to QuickBooks at all. They get LeanLaw first for a month to do all the time and billing, and they can see the client list and they can see that, but we don't let them have access because it just slows us down. And it's not in their interest to slow us down. So
yeah.
So how do they write a check? How do they write a check?
You work in your other platform. We have to do a hybrid model, essentially. That's a training moment at that moment, so that the information has been retained in the other platform. And it's a training opportunity for us to say, okay, you've got all this data. Let's figure out how to enter it. This is how you enter it, because now you have a segmented workflow. And obviously, it takes a little extra time. But if we are in a crunch and there are missed opportunities or things that have happened that haven't been, disclosed to every party, we go straight to the partners. And that conversation happens with the partner and the admin or whoever's assigned to us, because we don't want to belittle the person that's working with us. We want them inclusive of this dialogue. So it's a sensitive point. It's a great point to bring up. It's truly hard though.
There's a month in there that we're catching up for them, because now they've moved into the next month. We're catching up because it's not like we say, all right, September 1st, you're going to do your first billing in LeanLaw and you're going to have QuickBooks. We still have to do August, and August just finished. So we have to catch up August for them. But that's also, like Sarah said, it's a training month. We have the admin on so they can see as we start to pull in that month what we do, so that then we're with them we help them with September. We're there to help answer questions as they start to do it themselves.
Yeah, and I think Tracie, I think you'll attest to this. I think what's important is that when you're in advance of starting the process, it's important that you have alignment with the stakeholders and the largest voices of the law firm, such that they communicate to their team, hey, this month is going to be messy. Because what happens is, we get this in LeanLaw, we've onboarded them in September. The accounting data is not really going to be in place until late September, early October. Someone comes in through our chat sessions and says, I can't see this data. And we're like, my support team is trying to why would you see it? Are you, thinking it's a technical problem, But really what it was is that the senior partner, managing partner, didn't tell the attorney, hey, you wouldn't see this data for this month. They think something's broken. They call LeanLaw support, and now they're having this wrong technical conversation. So setting those expectations, both, because what I heard you say was setting the expectations at the client level, and the client communicating and articulating what to expect with their team, so the team's on board. Two, being very regimented in scheduling with consequences if clients move dates. And what she's really, I just want to reinforce this, what I think it was Sarah was saying, and Tracie, you'll attest to this. There is a back and forth that happens with data. And if a client sort of dumps you, we've been dumped on with just like, here's 17 separate files that we're supposed to assemble. And we're just like, we can't do it. And so it's there, you have to give yourself enough time to receive the data on our side, validate it, go back and forth. And Tracie, what percentage of the files that you get do you have to do manual work to sort of tune them?
All of them.
Let's say all of them.
Yeah. Every single one.
Let me phrase the question. What percentage of the clients that you get that you have to do tuning is significant tuning?
At least 50% of them.
And I think that speaks to my point. This is a huge opportunity to be really good at this, because this is work and clients have a lot of inertia about migration, and there's an opportunity to come in and help them steward this. And if you're not, there's kind of three pieces to it. And I want to point out, if you're not good at data extraction, there are folks like Karen Schwartz, who spoke up for a minute, who is very good at it, especially with time slips. She's a time slips expert. And you should all get her number, so that if you're interacting with a client, that she can be very helpful to do that data extraction on your behalf. Then you have the data and a partner in an Excel or some type of CSV file that you can then begin to manipulate and clean. So don't be intimidated to take these on, because there's partners that can come in and help you with that. So I want to end this and wrap this by saying, from Lynda, Sarah, and Tracie, any last thoughts about success in terms of making sure that data migration is done successfully?
I think.
Come on, Sarah, give me something.
Well, personally, I say, just remember, you're part of their team. We're in it. We're jointly trying to work through it. I mean, we've had to roll up our sleeves and help them, because we're like, Tracie's asking for this, and we understand what it means, and they still don't understand what it means. And Tracie's done an excellent job of saying it, and they're still like, what am I doing? So I say, give yourself the space and time. We've had success with that when we're all in there, and we're always saying, like, Tracie's our partner. It looks like a partnership. And if you could keep proceeding with that front line as a partnership, the success of them knowing, and they always say to Lynda and I, oh, we know you guys will take care of us. It's not just saying us. They understand, like, that means Tracie. They know that means LeanLaw. And they really understand and fundamentally start to appreciate that relationship. And it's a longer term relationship at that point. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, if you're thinking about taking on you're thinking that you want to take on a firm like this, and it's a mid-market firm, which is great, right? Because it's a firm that if you can start to work with the admin, you're going to start to they're going to see that you know way more about accounting, and then the partners are going to see what you can give them for results for reporting. Because that's a big piece of what we do, is talking to the staff to find out from the partners, what exactly are you looking for with data? Because a lot of these people are coming off of apps that are great with time and billing for what their needs were, but didn't give them all the details. Just think of the reports that are in LeanLaw now, and they aren't used to getting all that data. And then they become like kid in a candy store kind of thing. But if you can know what they want, you can set up QuickBooks the right way. And that's a big piece of what we do, because you have to make sure the data aligns so that you're going to be able to get that in the end. You don't want to have to go back and try to, I should have used classes, or, I should use classes for this, or I should use locations for that. You want to use the fields in QuickBooks. You got the advanced fields. They're going to get better. And just use it and set up LeanLaw even that way. And you'll end up getting a happy client. That Sarah and I end up having long-term engagements with these clients on more of an advisory level sometimes, and sometimes we even do the bookkeeping, because they find that the admin that's doing the bookkeeping also has a million other things they have to do, and they're realizing maybe she's better suited to do all the other stuff. And she might be doing entering the payments, or he or she entering payments, or just entering pieces of data that we're not in the office, but we can handle the rest from virtually. So it works out really well.
Okay, so I want to end this part of the conversation, and thanks Lynda, Sarah, and Tracie for participating in it, and move over. I assume they're going to scoot out of here a little early because they have another engagement that they need to get to. I think Lynda made a note. I'm not sure everyone's paying attention to the chat, but Aaron Welch asked, how much do you charge? I'm just going to end on this. Charge more than what you think it is, and don't think of it as a lost leader, and I'll maybe get the client for it. Data migration and this transition from one platform to the next is real work. And it can be exhaustive and time consuming and frustrating. And it's of immense value to the law firm, to what Lynda said in terms of long-term reporting. But when it's done right and handled right, it is an enormous value to the law firm. And when it's done on the cheap, it will result in long-term consequences. And you will hear horror stories from many law firms that essentially moved platforms and were very frustrated. I'm sure Karen Schwartz has heard many of these stories in her tenure in this space. And I think the biggest mistakes that law firms make, and why it was bad, is that they trusted the vendor. They said the vendor said they'd take care of it. And go ahead. Stephen, were you saying something? Oh, Stephen, anyways. So they trusted the vendor, and we can only do so much, right? Especially in a big firm. So that's why we rely on this community to partner with us to actually get into the weeds with the law firm and do that. Okay, thank you, Sarah, Lynda, and Tracie. I'm gonna jump into the next sort of phase. We've got 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure I have enough time. I'm gonna turn the presentation over to Tracie. And Tracie, I want you to speak specifically to the LeanLaw Accounting Pro activity. What's ahead and what's behind, what you've got done, what's ahead, some of the other things, and focus on that. So Tracie, you're on.
Okay, well, just to give a little refresher, that we are really putting forth a big effort to enhance and expand the LAP program. We're working with our marketing department, and we're going to focus on our 3 pillars: the community, collaboration, and education. So over the last month, one of the things we recently did was we sent out an LAP survey to get an idea of your prior and current involvement with QuickBooks, if you're a pro advisor, if you're an advanced pro advisor, and so forth. If you haven't received a survey, let us know so we can get you one. Some of the questions have to do with online community preferences so that we can build a more cohesive community online. I think we're asking preferences such as Facebook or Instagram or things like that. That's part of our community focus that we're trying to get done. As far as enhancing collaboration, we've also been working with a marketing team to get some additional benefits and perks for being an LAP. They'll be tied into the different certification tiers, which I'll show you in a moment. But that's basically to kind of add to the collaboration aspect, to really help you guys get your businesses and your law firm niches up and running. As far as the education part, that's where I've been working on the curriculum for our certification tiers. We have a learning management system that I've been using, and it's not complete, but I've got a good chunk of it done already. I'm going to give you a show and tell here in just a couple minutes. Trying to think over the last month. Also, I've been now acting as the LAP liaison and begun actually onboarding some of the new LAPs. So for what's coming up next, I'm going to work on completing the curriculum, and based on the completion of the survey, start to register you guys to the courses that you're going to need to get the different certifications. Also, I'm going to restructure the onboarding a little bit so that the process is a little bit more streamlined as far as guiding people through the process and making sure all the requirements are met, and that we come up with a really good and fair system as far as giving out referrals, because I know that's a big part of why you guys want to be part of the community. Also, I'm probably going to make sure we have a either monthly or maybe bi-monthly, depending on the need, group LAP demo. So for all of the new people coming on, they'll be able to, if they can wait, if not, we can do an individual one, but they can have a group session to do the initial demo. Okay, let me share my screen and I'm going to give you a quick look of what the LAP curriculum is going to kind of look like. So when you first come on, let me get myself out of the way here. Hang on.
This is early work in progress, but I was like, I want to show something today. So if there's any clumsiness, it's my fault.
Yeah, it's early work in progress. I wasn't quite ready, but it's okay. We'll deal with it. So when you first come on as a student, you're going to be able to be in the course catalog. As you're going to be able to see, there's course 1 has multi-parts to it just because it deals with the whole step-by-step setup of LeanLaw as you onboard your new law firm clients. There's a number of different parts to the course, and each one will have some video sections, and you'll also be able to download the information. So I'll just give you a brief little peek. When you log on and you click on your first course, it'll give you an overview of what this particular part is. It'll give you some information on it. It'll give you an overview of the content for each of the sections in this particular section of the course. And it'll give you the completion rules. It's basically set so that it builds upon each other. So you can't go to the second one until you've completed the first one and so forth. When you start the course, it'll just bring you into the information. You'll go through whether it's a video or just written information like this. There's a lot of graphics. When you're done, you'll move on to the next section and so on. As you get to the end, there will be little quizzes along the way, just to kind of make sure everybody's paying attention and understanding the material. And it's not a pass or fail kind of thing. You can just keep answering until you get it right, basically. But it just will give you a little extra information. Just like that. As you complete the different modules, it's going to start fulfilling your requirements to get to the different tiers. Let me show you that now. So what we have, we'll have 3 tiers. We'll have, and it's similar to kind of how QuickBooks Online does their certifications. We'll have the bronze tier, the silver, and the gold. And may possibly someday have a platinum, but that's still way on the back burner. Each level will give you the instructions on what the requirements are in both LeanLaw and QuickBooks, and we'll kind of give you an overview of some of the benefits. Now, we're doing this because not everybody that has QuickBooks experience has like the exact same type of experience. And we've found that people who have the certifications as a pro advisor or advanced online will really do a better job with their clients being able to explain things. And we've tied it into the curriculum in LeanLaw so that, you know, if you've completed course 2 and you've got the active pro advisor status, that's a certain skill set that's going to, you know, we pretty much from our experience dealing with clients and LAPs, that's going to be a certain skill set. Same as the gold is going to be even a little bit more advanced as far as some of the more technical aspects of both LeanLaw and QuickBooks. Some new benefits that we're adding is along with our marketing department, they will actually help you in your business. There's going to be social media spotlights. They will do things such as, I think it's called a pitch deck. They're going to give you examples of some monthly social media templates. I have this written down here. Here we go. Brandable pitch decks and other tools. So it's going to be a lot more effort from us in our marketing department to help you grow your legal niche and, you know, have it be very collaborative as far as being able to refer people back and forth so that we have mutual clients. That's all I've got.
Well, that was wonderful. So I think the most important note here is that, you know, we're becoming more savvy on helping educate you folks. We always want to be educated by you to help you better identify yourself as a certain LeanLaw pro and making sure you have a certain accreditation and getting more regimented on making sure that the folks that are signed up as LAPs actually know what they're doing, because that's super important to us. I'm going to quickly, Aaron Welsh is asking me some questions. Just get to me after this meeting and I'll help you. So I want to just share my screen one last time and talk a little bit about the product and product roadmap and bring a few little features. We only have 10 minutes left for today, so I wanted to make sure I don't ignore the product. So the first thing, I'm going to share this screen. And I've got to find the right page. So I pulled this from my CTO's presentation he gave at the meeting. So where we are in terms of the product and product management is that this is what the next upcoming months look like. So we did include last month, bring in user permissions, and we talked about some performance security. That's the next platform. Right now, we're working on a few little features, electronic trust payments, meaning the ability to receive a trust payment, like ask and receive a trust payment, and receivable aging, meaning when you see AR in LeanLaw, you'll actually see the aging associated with that, so that those lawyers don't have to ask an assistant, what's my AR, and they'll see the live data coming out of QuickBooks. The next thing, as I mentioned, for September is Microsoft 365. That's absolutely 100% on track. What you saw slip was time adjustments, write-downs. We slipped that because we had sort of an epiphany that in some very large clients that needed more flexibility in compensation tracking and revenue recognition. And so we decided as a company to shift some things around so that we'll have, again, more flexibility for going into mid-market firms and setting up compensation tracking. And with that, being able to deliver the underlying data. So what we're focused on at LeanLaw is the idea that, you know, we're going to produce basic compensation reports, but at any time, if you want the underlying data out of LeanLaw, that can be extracted to Excel and manipulated in Excel because there's so many different compensation nuances that we just can't cover. So the bad news is adjustments got pushed a few months. The good news is we're going to get better at compensation tracking, and Microsoft 365 integration is right on track. Two little things I want to show you in product really quickly. So we added one feature. Here that in your expense setup, everyone can see my screen, correct? Yeah. When we go to QuickBooks, and now when we go to expense settings, you'll see this new feature, which a lot of people like. This says that if you've tagged a vendor, if you've added an expense in QuickBooks, and there's a vendor associated, by checking that box, LeanLaw will put in the vendor name into the description. So if you had a LexisNexis bill, you would see LexisNexis and then some description of that. That's a new feature that we added that enhanced that expense workflow. The second thing that we did under users, just as an FYI, is we've added this CC responsible on invoices. And I'll get to the chats in a second. Oh, good. Tracie's on chats. We added CC to responsible. And the reason I'm bringing up these little features is sometimes they get lost in the weeds, but they're really useful. This CC responsible invoice means that if I'm the responsible attorney on it, by checking that, I get a CC copy of all of my invoices automatically. So you don't have to mail it to the responsible when you email it out to the client. It automatically happens. So I just wanted to highlight those two things. The other thing I want to highlight and is this. And this is my live phone. So I'm screen sharing my phone right now live, and I wanted to show you the new LeanLaw mobile app. This was a big effort that we made in the first half of the year, and I don't think anyone's really seen it. So instead of focusing on the product, today I wanted to show this mobile app and just a few things you can do with it. It's the spirit of the mobile app is that it's meant to be time tracking. It's not meant to be running your practice on a mobile phone. So on the very bottom here, I can see the main menus. So I have time entries, expenses, my clients and matters, and timers, and I'm just moving. If I want to enter a new time entry, I click New Time Entry, and I have a series of items here that I can see, the date, the client, I can pick Jackie, the matter, If there's only one client, one matter, we don't have to pick the matter, of course. LeanLaw always do that. Now she happens to have leads billing associated with that, so I can add my activity code. Maybe there's a task code that I need to add as well. And then set my time. I'll put this as 0.9. And you know, it's already deemed billable. We're going to deem that billable. Now I've got some text here, and this was super fun. I can use the voice to text to add my entry regarding a deposition held last week, period. So you can see that, whoops, got to turn it off. So you can see that they can do that. Now, if I say add multiple entries, it'll do multiple entries. When I save that, that's done. There's no additional work that user needs to do, and that is uploaded to the LeanLaw environment immediately. If I want to do an expense, I just add an expense and you get a standard workflow. We do not have an image capture tool of the expense receipt. We are not trying to be Expensify, but we did want to add some basic expense functionality so that someone could capture that amount, you know, and it was, you know, to say it was a corporate stock review. And then you can add a description here, you know, there. Add description here.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works. And you can save that, and that will immediately upload to the expenses. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes because sometimes these little parts of the tools don't get noticed. Now this is available for Mac and for iOS and for Android. Any questions on that? No. Okay. What we'll see coming in the mobile app in the future, you might see a little bit some other My Practice features that we might boil down, but we really don't want the mobile app to be anything more than a time entry tool and a light expense tracking tool. We've had clients ask for you know, mileage tracking on their mobile phone and things of that nature. And when we start to see a client get really elaborate with that, we say, hey, you should probably do a proper tool like, you know, Expensify or some other tool that tracks mileage. Okay, so we will have another, we're at the end of the session here, we'll have another LAP meetup. I'm gonna put this away and stop my share. Next month, it will be September, and I really feel embarrassed that I don't know the topic, but what we're going to be getting into is, what I believe the topic next year is about how to prepare a client to think about changing the platform at the year end. So we're at this moment right now in September where firms are actually open to the idea with the typically a fiscal year transitioning at January 1st to making a change in the software. So what key considerations are going to be there? That's going to be our topic of the day there. In the months to come, we'll do a state of the state probably in November, December, meaning state of LeanLaw, where we're headed in the year ahead. And I'll invite Fred Willerup, our CTO, and Gary Allen, our CEO, into that conversation. So the rest of the year of the meetups will be more about data and data transition, how to have that conversation, and a little bit looking ahead into 2021. If there were some questions asked in the chat that we didn't get to, we will follow up with you individually. I also, in the chat, put forth the 2 links to the last product demonstration that LeanLaw did last week, and then also the Fogelman webinar. And I will say a note for the Fogelman webinar that I did with her. We dealt with this exact subject of essentially onboarding a new client and how to package that and what some of the advantages are. So if you were to have, 45, 50 minutes to think about it, that was a really lively topic about staging that and some of the value there. So I think there's some good content, and that's in the chat session. If for some reason you don't have it, just ping us and we will get it to you. I thank you all for participating today. I thank Lynda and Sarah for their time and Tracie for your input. I appreciate all of you taking the time to meet with us, and I'm going to say goodbye and thank you. Have a great day, everyone.